Aces of Bases, a collaboration between the College Baseball Experience and the College Baseball Insiders, is brought to you by Sports Gambling Podcast Network and Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball Mania is live with $15 million in prizes. Sign up today with promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick, plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCESGPN. And we're also brought to you by Royal Retros. Royal Retros has jerseys, t-shirts, hats, jackets, and sweatshirts from the old school teams that you love. Use promo code SGPN for 10% off your order today. That's code SGPN for all of the old school teams gear that you love at royalretros.com. And it is showtime, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode. We have branding now. Like, we have a name that we're going to run with this little recap show or whatever. We're going to call it Aces of Bases. Basically, if you remember that fantasy baseball stream that we did in the preseason, that group, we're all in a group chat. And whenever anybody is available on Sunday nights and or after some postseason baseball nights, we'll jump on here and do a little bit of a talk show. By the way, Grissom, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo.
Great.
I'm just helping out because I know the camera, and it might be StreamYard too. Who knows? But we were dealing with some issues before this show. My computer blue screen, so we were on like a 20-minute delay there, and then something in our studios lagging or whatever connection. But what's going on, everybody? My name is Noah Bieniek, aka 77. If you have not tuned in to my show, and if you've not tuned into the College Baseball Experience, this is Matt Grissom, my guest today from the College Baseball Insiders. Matt, what's going on today? How was your weekend? What did you take in? What's your thoughts to open the show?
I'm sorry, Kentucky fans, and I'm going to try to help with this echo by putting headphones in real quick.
Oh, no. Now the camera's frozen.
Today.
I'm not kidding you. The camera's frozen. All right.
My gosh.
So I'm going to go with my opening thoughts on this show. We'll see how fast he gets back in. But I was credentialed media for games 1 and 2 of Michigan's weekend series. Michigan was hosting Purdue this weekend. Both Michigan and Purdue entered the series. Michigan was 2.5 games behind Big Ten first place standings. Purdue 2 games behind Illinois in first place. Michigan wins that series 2 of 3 in there. Purdue won game 1 with Jordan Morales on the mound, and he shoved, went 7 2/3. And then the next reliever after that, another low slot joker, threw 11 total pitches and got 4 outs. And that was the game. 4-0 loss for Michigan in that game. However, Michigan comes back and wins game 2, game 3, behind some excellent hitting. The pitching staff's a little bit nicked up right now. We don't have a full strength staff. However, they were hot with the bats in games 2 and 3. They made up for it from game 1. I will say the Big Ten, it's not great compared to national relevancy. However, this weekend was very, very fun. All 6 of the top 6 teams were playing against each other. Illinois takes 2 of 3 against Iowa. They are 15-6 in conference. They are on top of the standings currently. Nebraska threw away game 1, but they come back and wins games 2 and 3. They are 1 game back of Illinois. And then there's a 3-way tie at 13-8, 2 games back of first place in the Big Ten. Michigan, Indiana, and Purdue. Michigan and Indiana play each other. That one's in Bloomington the last weekend of the season. And Nebraska is at Michigan State. Illinois, I forget who they have on deck, but I think this is Illinois' conference race to lose. Grissom, all right, we're back. Camera's working. Your opening thoughts?
Like I was saying before I froze, hats off to Kentucky fans. Both games they win in extra innings. It was a big series win for them. I thought that they would go on the road being fat and happy after knocking off Arkansas last week and get bounced by Florida, and they showed that they're just an extremely gritty squad. So, I mean, they deserve to be, and we'll get to it, but they're my number, I think, 2 team right now. This is a team that I feel like could make some noise in the postseason. They're a group that won't go away. And then Arkansas about gave me a heart attack earlier today. You go down 8-0 yesterday behind Brady Tigers' abysmal start. Not sure what happened with Brady. Then you think, okay, Mason Molina, no way that our game 2 and game 3 starters have back-to-back bad outings. And then we get down 6-0 today to Mississippi State. Now, we're able to lean into that very talented bullpen that we have. We held Mississippi State 6 runs, and we ended up coming back to win 6-9. Nice. And I was glad because that series went exactly how I thought it would. Win, loss, win. Your Angelo Sainchi got the win yesterday. So Arkansas fans can stay off the bridge for at least one more weekend. But those were my 2 biggest takeaways. And then third, I hate to add insult to injury because I know that you're a Clemson Tiger fan because of Eric Bakich, but they got taken to the woodshed by Wake Forest, who I think is just – they are trending in the right direction right now. And opposite of A&M, I feel like A&M may have peaked a little too soon. We'll see. I had some A&M fans in my mentions yesterday about me saying that, but you drop 2 back-to-back series on the road. It's not really that cause of a concern, but on the flip side, it was against Ole Miss and LSU, 2 teams that I don't feel like are very good this year, but they are trending in the right direction. LSU had a bad loss, though, against Alabama this past weekend, which I feel like is going to hurt A&M a little bit.
For sure. LSU only 10 conference wins in the SEC right now. They finish with Ole Miss, so they host Ole Miss next week. That one's going to be the great Rocco's Jello Shot weekend series. Rocco's, the Omaha bar, heading down to Baton Rouge to sell some Jello Shots for that one. Yeah, I predicted that Wake Forest would win this series. However, I think my initial reaction to you, like when you sent me the weekend rotation for Wake Forest, that Michael Massey was not going to be making a start this weekend, I was like, okay, Clemson's got a real shot to win this. I still think Wake takes it. However, I was like, Clemson's winning game 2. And that bullpen gave it up late in game 2, struggled in game 3. It's the weakness of this team right now, for sure. And that's come to light as of more recent for the Tigers. I want to talk about this. We're going to transition into some of the results from the top 10 this week. And then after I say this, you can take it and run with any of the series that you want to. But I had a tweet on Friday night. It was a very shocking decision, or a very shocking outcome, seeing that Texas A&M lost game 1 at Ole Miss. And I just tweeted out the quote that Colby Dant always says: when you hit the road in college sports, when you hit the road in college sports, you lose. That's just what happens. That's road environments for you in college sports are tough to go in and win against. In the top 10, number 2, Clemson loses at number 12, Wake Forest. Number 3, Texas A&M loses at Ole Miss. These are series losses, by the way. Number 6, East Carolina got swept. That's not proper English.
There you go.
Number 6, East Carolina got swept at Tulane. Number 8, Florida State lost at Pitt. They lost the first 2 games at Pitt. Number 9, Duke loses at Georgia Tech. And the one top 10 team that lost the series at home this week was Virginia, who lost to just a enigma that is NC State. So, Grissom, any of those series catch your fancy this weekend? After your opening thoughts here.
I think the biggest one, and you didn't mention it, Georgia gets a sweep on the road. I think that was big for the Bulldogs. Wes Johnson's done a phenomenal job, and this team has proved that they're going to be deadly whichever regional they get in. And pitching has been a concern, but like at least through the regional, super regionals, you could make the case that offenses will carry you through there. I mean, case in point, TCU last year, they just absolutely raked all over Arkansas, and it didn't really matter. I mean, Arkansas would have had to score 15, 16 runs a game to win those. But Georgia's a team that's getting really hot right now. They performed really well on the road, which is big. North Carolina, to me, is one that they were not on the road, though, were they?
North Carolina?
Yeah. You didn't say North Carolina on that road?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
They didn't lose the
trying to
series.
think back. No, they didn't lose the series. I've already touched on Clemson. I mean, I've had Wake Forest pegged to win that series. They did. I did think Clemson would win one, like you said. As with Tristan Smith, I was on the Tigers yesterday. That
North
loss.
Carolina swept Louisville. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Who played Georgia Tech? Was Duke?
Georgia Tech
Duke was
beat
the
Duke.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I see Crutch's comment over there. How about Duke announcing no Santucci?
I didn't catch that, but I handicapped that game with Santucci starting, and I still
it was in pregame warmups. He did something. He tweaked something in his elbow, from what I read.
Oh, that's not
that's not good.
It's not good because
that's why he was a late scratch.
He had bone chips removed from his elbow last year. It wasn't Tommy John like a lot of people feared it was last year, but it was season ending. If it's another elbow, specifically left elbow, that's tough to hear for sure. I didn't hear why he was scratched. All I know that there was an uproar about him not starting the game and everybody was mad, but I handicapped him starting it and I still picked Georgia Tech, so it didn't bother me at all. But
good play.
I hope that he gets healthy here for the postseason. The one that I'm going to take and run with for a quick second here is that sweep of East Carolina. It's just gonna absolutely cripple ECU's chances of being a top 8 national seed here. You can kiss those hopes goodbye. They currently sit 12th in the RPI. The remaining games this season, they have one home game against Campbell, who's RPI 83, and then 3 in a home series against Rice, who's 172nd. Like, they aren't going any higher than 12 right now. You're going to drop to around 15 or 16, even if you win all 4 of those games, in my opinion, just because you're playing much weaker teams. That's what the RPI does. That's the issue with the RPI. Even if you're beating the teams on your schedule, it's going to affect you. East Carolina is a bubble team to be a top 16 seed, in my opinion. Like, their record makes them comfortable to be on the right side of the bubble. However, that Tulane weekend is a black eye big time on that resume. Let's move on to the next thing that we want to talk about here. You kind of hinted at it a little bit. Let's talk about National Coach of the Year conversation. I have 4 candidates here. I'll explain, kind of the reasoning of why they could win National Coach of the Year in college baseball. And then at the end, you can add any of the thoughts that you have on the 4 guys, or just say which one you think should be given the award. Right now, my front runner is Wes Johnson of Georgia, like you mentioned. Coming into the year, like, he was the brand new coach in an SEC program, projected to be like a bottom 3 team in the conference this year. That's not where I had them. I had them overachieving their expectations. They had a 9.5 win total, which was the actual second lowest in the conference. And currently, their RPI is top 5 in the nation. They are a top 5 team in the SEC right now. They've completely overachieved. And it's with a pitching staff like Wes Johnson, known as a pitching guru. It's with a pitching staff that hasn't been amazing this season. The second guy here that I think should be in the Coach of the Year conversation is Nick Mingione of Kentucky. Another team that was not expected to do too much. Win total of 14.5, which was on the below average side of preseason expectations. And they're sitting here currently in the driver's seat to win the SEC regular season title, 1 game above Tennessee, and I think 2 over Arkansas, if that is correct. So Nick Mingione went out and replaces a lot of the guys in the lineup with some transfer portal pieces. They did have a couple of starting pitchers return, but they've completely retooled that pitching staff as well. So this is pretty much a brand new Kentucky team, and they are fun to watch. Nick Mingione is in the conversation. The next guy here, I think there's a clear top three, and then there's a fourth candidate that I'm going to throw in here for fun. Scott Forbes of North Carolina needs to be in the Coach of the Year conversation here. They lose their ace in the preseason, Jake Knapp, and they have Fulger Boaz and Jason DeCaro starting Friday and Saturday games for the first 3 quarters of the season, and now they're down Boaz too due to injury. So they've lost 2 Friday starters this season, and they are running away with the ACC, currently 3 games up on anybody in that conference. If they haven't already clinched the ACC regular season title, I don't know if there's any tiebreakers to that because Clemson and North Carolina have not played this season. North Carolina would just need to win 1 game at Duke in their final regular season series this weekend. Scott Forbes is a National Coach of the Year candidate for sure. And the fourth one that I have on my list here is Chris Lemonis from Mississippi State. Borderline getting fired last year. Borderline, like fans wanting him fired in February this year after losing a couple of midweek games and not having some series go their way early. They lose Nate Dome, their Friday night starter, and they have turned things completely around, and they have one of the best 1-2 weekend rotation punches in the SEC. So those 4 guys, Wes Johnson of Georgia, Nick Mingione of Kentucky, Scott Forbes of North Carolina, and Chris Lemonis of Mississippi State. I think those are your Coach of the Year candidates in college baseball. Grissom, take it wherever you want. Give me your front runner. Give me your thoughts on those 4 guys. If you have anybody else, throw them into the conversation as well.
I think right now, probably what Wes Johnson has done is most impressive thing. I think maybe the one knock you could give him is that he does have Charlie Condon on his team, which always helps. So you inherit a team that is pretty stacked. I mean, Georgia they were decent last year. I think I can't remember what they finished, but they still had Condon and they had a pretty salty lineup. Pitching was a concern for them last year, much of the same this year. Tony Vitello Crutch just said that was going to be another name. What was
I expected
Tennessee's
them.
win?
Their win total was 17.5. It was tied for third, or tied for the 4th highest win total in the conference in the preseason. But I had them winning this conference. It's not a surprise to me per se. I don't think this award usually goes to one of the top teams that goes out and does what some people expected them to do. It's usually if it's a dry competition for the award, it is. But this year, I think there's 3 solid candidates to win this thing.
Do you remember what Mississippi State's win total was? Would you say?
I have it. I have the key, the answer sheet taped on the side of my desk here.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah, Mississippi State's win total was 11.5. It was the 4th lowest in the conference.
And they're already at 15. They close out the season hosting Missouri. So arguably they could be 18-12 after next weekend.
I think Georgia beats them in that argument, though, in that type of conversation with Wes Johnson.
Yeah, I think you've got to give it to Wes Johnson at this point.
Yeah,
what he's done has been the most impressive.
If they hold serve, they'll be a top 5 national seed at this point.
Yeah.
Followed by who?
It's scary.
It is.
I mean, Eric Mingione, he's had a great season with Kentucky. I hate to not put him in the 2 spot, but I don't know. Chris Lemonis, what'd you say Kentucky's win total was? 14.5?
So Nick Mingione in Kentucky were set at 14.5. And then also the other candidate was Scott Forbes.
So who's overperformed more than Kentucky by going 6?
I still think it's Georgia. You're asking like Kentucky or Mississippi State?
Yeah. Outside of Georgia.
So yeah, Kentucky currently sitting at 20 wins in the conference right now. They are 5.5 games overperforming, and Mississippi State 4.5.
I don't know. That's tough. I think you've got to, with respect to North Carolina and what they've done, I think it's either Wes Johnson or Eric Mingione. I like Mingione to win it, especially if they take care of business against Vanderbilt this weekend and they get to 22 wins. That would be in the SEC. Like, that's a huge feat. Maybe a 40-win team too.
100%, and they'll win the regular season in the SEC. That's
I mean, that's a big jump from
it's a big trump card. Big trump card for sure. We'll get to one viewer question real quick before we hit our first ad read of the show. Sunday Puncher 2009 asks, how many bids does the CAA, the Coastal Athletic Association, get? It's UNCW, College of Charleston, good Lord, and Northeastern. The question here is Northeastern, I think. Charleston beat the Huskies in the weekend series this year. UNCW is in good shape RPI-wise. And same with Northeastern for that, in that argument. But Northeastern, not one of the best non-conference strength of schedules in the country at just 60th. They're 19-6 in the CAA, 34-15 overall. They are firmly on the bubble, 4-4 in quad one. I will have a show coming out tomorrow, bracketology wise. Tune into that because Northeastern is going to be on the bubble. UNCW is going to be on the bubble too, but they've been on the correct side of the bubble for a good solid month. So I don't think anything's changed on that front. Did I lag for a second there?
No, not on me.
Okay. All right. So that's my opinion on that. Do you have any thoughts on the CAA race right now?
How many bids do they get? I mean, they'll get the conference champ.
I think they're good enough to get 3. I don't think that's the question. Because the conference champ might even be Charleston.
Yeah.
And they have the lowest RPI of the bunch. Northeastern's currently sitting 31st. UNC Wilmington 43rd. And Charleston is 50th in RPI.
And Charleston just won the series against Northeastern, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I would be worried about getting in is Northeastern. I know you said they're on the bubble right now, but that's probably the most talented team. Now, whether or not 100%. They can put it together, I mean, we were big on the Huskies going into the season. They've just shit the bed.
Maybe unrationally big with the performance they've had so far. And their stars haven't lived up to it at all. Cam Maldonado is not even a starting player, or at least he wasn't 2 weeks ago when I was really paying attention. When they lost to NCAA, I just did not even look at any of those games this weekend against Charleston. All right, real quick, we have some fun topics that we're going to finish the show off with. But are you a hardcore baseball fan or just a degenerate sitting in an office looking for some afternoon action? Either way, you'll want to make sure you subscribe to the MLB Gambling Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're not already subscribed to the College Baseball Experience or the College Baseball Insiders, go ahead and hit that subscribe, hit like, thumbs up it or whatever, leave a comment, rate, review on any podcast platform out there. And the NBA playoffs are also here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting for you guys. It's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across some of your favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog is available in 30-plus states, including California, Texas, and even Canada. Personally, I was writing nightly articles for the college basketball season. We were hitting that 62%. When you're doing that, it's pretty fun. Underdog is available in 30-plus states, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched their Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. They also just launched or are now legal in Michigan for drafting. So if you are interested in fantasy drafts, prefer like a specific best ball, Underdog Fantasy is one of the best platforms out there for best ball fantasy football. Use promo code TCE SGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE. SGPN. All right. We have a fun topic that we want to talk about here. You said that somebody hit you up on Twitter asking for a similarity. I don't know if you want to walk through the origin of how this topic came to be, but you put out a list comparing teams from this 2024 season to last year's 2023 season. I have been thinking of this throughout the regular season. I've never voiced my opinion on it because, in my opinion,
because you're going to get ripped on Twitter is what's going to happen.
In my opinion,
and I don't
though,
mind it. I don't mind conversation about it.
Yeah.
But don't
it's
just
fun.
come at me with trash list, delete this.
It's fun
give me
conversation making.
Right. They're totally different scenarios. I get that. I
will
put something out there to start
a
conversation. And it did.
Yeah, you did a great job at doing it. Both you and Q, both posts got a lot of attention. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this on this show. Personally, the reason why I haven't said it anything publicly is I don't believe in comparing teams year to year, because with the whole transfer portal and a lot of people just graduating, teams look different, completely different year to year. And that's not we're comparing different programs to each other on different kind of year scales per se in this exercise. So pulling up the tweet that you had on X earlier today, Grissom on X, go over there and follow him. He was like, I've been asked to compare some of the last season's teams to this season's. So here's my first attempt. Tell me where I'm wrong. Grissom, go ahead and read them if you want to. He's dealing with some little ones over there.
Talking to a 5-year-old right now. He wants to go play dodgeball.
That sounds like fun.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. We've gotten him hooked. We have to play every single night. So he's going to just absolutely rake in PE because he's got a 35-year-old man hurling balls at his face. And when he just takes it and throws right back. So I'm training men over here.
That is awesome.
So 24. Let's go to the comparison I made. 2023 Florida Gators. You look, they had a very deep pitching staff. Started with Brandon Sproat, Hurston Waldrop, a really solid 1-2 punch. And I feel like Tennessee's got that with now they're using Chris Stamos as an opener and then piggybacking him with AJ Causey, followed by Drew Beam, who I've always been high on Drew Beam. I think the kid's super talented. And then they've got a star-studded lineup with Billy Amick and Christian Moore, and I know I'm forgetting somebody else, Blake Burke. I mean, you can make the comparisons to Florida's lineup. I mean, those guys could just absolutely rake. You never know who's going to take you yard if you're an opposing pitcher. So I think Tennessee, just like Florida, I think they get to the national championship series, and then it's gonna be on their pitching staff to maintain. 24 Kentucky, I made the parallel to them to 23 Virginia. This is just a team that was solid. They didn't have anybody that just wowed you off the page in either pitching staff or their batting order. Jake Jolloff was really good for Virginia, but I think you could make comparisons to Kentucky in the way that they play the game and just hit. It's all timely hitting and solid pitching, not just jump off the page, wow you. And then I guess this one is the one that.
When do you want me to step in and give my thoughts on your comparison?
After every single one of them.
So 24 Tennessee, 23 Florida, I don't have an issue with. Kentucky this year compared to last year's Virginia, I don't really agree. I think Virginia had some stars in that lineup. You mentioned Jake Geloff, but they also had Kyle. And that starting rotation was a top 10 starting rotation in the country last year. They didn't really have a face of it. Nick Parker was their Friday night guy. He was solid. He was dealing with getting hit in the face, had orbital or cheekbone surgery, and he missed time. And then once he came back, he was super solid. They had Connolly Early, the transfer from Army. I guess you could compare that to a Damon Neiman, but he's struggled in SEC play, in my opinion. He was good in non-con, but he's faced higher caliber competition. He kind of looks like an up transfer from a mid major. I thought Virginia had a really good 1-2-3-4 in the starting rotation, and they had 2 stars in that lineup, and they all raked up and down the order. I can get the comparison lineup wise a little bit more than the starting rotation.
And like you said, the pitching staff, they didn't have a lot of stars. It was just a lot of guys. And I feel like that's what Kentucky was. Maybe not so much here lately, but I feel like Kentucky's 3-man rotation for most of the season, they were like a sub 3.5 ERA. So it was a lot of guys that were doing good things and getting it done, but you didn't know who they were. But I feel like that's part of just being at Kentucky. I mean, they're not a baseball school. Virginia is. So I get that to an extent. That was a reach. 24 Arkansas, 23 LSU. Now, listen, I know Arkansas does not have a Tommy Tanks or a Trey Morgan or a Dylan Cruz. I get that. LSU's team last year was special, okay? You had the number 1 and number 2 Golden Spikes winner and finalist on the same team. Like, that's deadly. However, the biggest question mark, this is where I say you have to hold 2 thoughts in your head at the same time. You saw last year, the biggest question mark for LSU was who throws after Paul Skeens. They didn't have anybody until Ty Floyd stepped up in the postseason and started giving you a solid second option after Paul Skeens. If Ty Floyd, Griffin Herring, Nate Ackenhausen, any of those guys, if they have to throw against Rhett Lauder and Wake Forest is winning that game. That was Paul Skeens' big game. They had to win. Who was next? That's what mattered for LSU last season.
Are you saying that's the issue with Arkansas?
Right now, Noah, Brady Tigert, and Mason Molina came into the season as perhaps one of the best number 2, number 3 starters in the country. They have struggled mightily. Arkansas is that Hagen Smith is this year's Paul Skeens.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that take.
Right now for Arkansas, it's who can start in game 2 and not give up 6 or 8 runs in the second inning and have to go out.
You guys have an embarrassment of riches on the mound. I'm not comparing this team to LSU at all.
Who would you compare them to then?
I don't think you have that's my opinion on this. Like, I don't have to find a comparison for everybody.
Well, I mean, that's but that's the job of the scenario here.
So
Wake Forest is another team.
No, because Wake Forest is better offensively too. Like you guys you can't match Brock Wilken or Nick Kurtz. I'm sorry.
Correct.
I'm being nice. Hold on.
I think you said 23 Tennessee.
But 23 Tennessee was a 2 seed. Like they were 2. Like, I'm not giving that to them either.
I know.
Like,
it's hard.
And they struggled in the middle of the year.
It's hard to find a comparison. That's why I thought the best comparison was either Wake or LSU.
I am pulling up
last year's field. If Rhett Lauder was starting or Paul Skeens was starting, you get that win.
How about this one? You guys are. Do I want to say it?
What? Stanford.
That's what I was gonna say. Stanford.
I could see that because Quinn Matthews.
You have a Quinn Matthews comparable to Hagen Smith. That Stanford lineup was a bit more stacked, like up and down than this Arkansas one. But Stanford also had a bunch of they were all very similar to each other. Like, they were top performers in the Pac-12. When they would step out of the Pac-12, they kind of got exposed. They were swept in Omaha 3 straight seasons. They got to Omaha 3 straight seasons, but they went 0-6 in those 6 games. I think you could compare the Stanford lineup to Arkansas and get away with it a little bit better than you can with LSU. And LSU's pitching staff isn't even comparable to this Like I said, it's an embarrassment of riches of Arkansas. You're just dealing with a couple of guys that aren't pitching their best baseball right now, but you have plenty of options after those two. Like you said, Gage Wood has the ability to take somebody's job in the weekend rotation. You also have Will McIntyre, who's done the damn thing for years now at this point. So those top 5 can't be matched in the country. It's just when you get into the postseason play, who's the hottest team? That's what you guys are worried about right now. But from the outside, not a Razorback fan, you guys still have the best pitching staff on paper, and that LSU team cannot compare to it at all. Trash. I'm kidding.
Okay. Trash. I mean, I'll take it. Last year's Tennessee team, they were 99th out of 305 in batting average, but second in team ERA, second in XFIP, second in Sierra. Wake Forest was, I guess, 19th the only in batting average, and then
I would see that comparison pitching more than LSU. The only reason why I push back on it is because LSU actually did suck for a time and period in that season last year. From March to the early May, like they were a bad team. They were swept by Missouri last year. So, and they finished as a 2 seed. I can't compare like a top 3 seed in this year's tournament to last year Tennessee.
Yeah.
Just based off of trajectory.
That's fair. I mean, I see the Stanford comparison too, but Stanford was 16th in weighted runs created, 15th in WOBA, 12th in batting average.
But like I said, I think you could balance it out a little bit because of the competition that they played day in, day out in the conference and the different conferences.
Yeah. But I guess that one was the one that threw some people off.
I pulled up. This is
but
funny.
Also, like the counter argument to that was somebody said A&M is LSU, and I don't think that's true. Ryan Frey, like A&M,
they both had really good lineups and multiple stars in the lineup. Ryan Prager isn't quite Paul Skeens, and they also kind of have the issue of they can't figure out who's 2 and 3 right now after Prager, but they have dependable guys in the bullpen where at this point last year LSU did not. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
but Texas A&M is kind of
know what Ty Floyd was though.
No, and at this point last, like I can see it on the team trajectory wise. Like LSU was number 1 team in the country until early May, and then Wake Forest took it and ran with it for the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Texas A&M kind of just did the same thing that LSU did last year.
Yeah.
So I could see that. Just if you're strictly looking at comparing Prager to Skeens, it's not doable.
Yeah, I like it more on the offensive side. I think
for sure.
They're both deep. It's a tough.
So you compared this year's Texas A&M to 2023 Vanderbilt. What were your thoughts on that?
3 very good starters. That one, I think Vanderbilt won 14 straight, and then won like 18 of 19 at one point in the season. They were very, very good. I'm pretty sure they didn't tie for the SEC regular season. I think
no, but they won the SEC.
Arkansas did. Yeah,
they won the SEC tournament though. Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt. Their offense last year was not as good as Texas A&M's is this year. No. But I also think that they have a great coach, Tim Corbin, Jim Schlossnagle. They had a good starting rotation. They were deep, but they kind of had the benefit of a softer SEC schedule. And then once competition got harder, they started to lose games. They lost 2 of their last 3 series. Texas A&M probably losing 2 of their last 3 series. They both end with Arkansas at home. Vanderbilt won that series 2-1 last year. I think A&M wins it 2-1 this year. And if they go on and win the SEC, I'm going to sell them hard in the regionals. because I think they peaked too soon. I think they're talented, but there comes a point where you don't really want to be playing your best ball in the middle of the season, and I think A&M was. So now what? That's my question mark for A&M.
The hot, cold, hot, or in your case, cold, hot, cold theory can, like, the time period in between, like when a team doesn't have the mojo to when the team can get that mojo back and then roll with it in the postseason. The NCAA tournament's an entire month long. It's 3.5 weeks. You know what I mean? So, like, this time period right now, I don't think I agree with trying to pick a team that's hot right now, because that goes away when they leave conference and they have to jump into a regional in early June.
I love this person just telling a story in the comments over here.
Weehawk's one of our most loyal.
He goes, love this.
Here's my Mother's Day college baseball story. Western Carolina starts off down 10-1. They come back and make it a game. College baseball on a Sunday. Game 1 started at 1. It's 4:40 or so in the afternoon. Mason Holton comes to the plate. It's tied 13-13. His parents are sitting in front of us. They have a 7:00 p.m. flight in Nashville. Sorry, not Nashville. About an hour drive from the stadium. We joke with them that Mason needs to end it now, and I assume he does, because Weehawk was at the game. He's tweeting about it. Western Carolina walked it off today, so they can return their. He goes, so they can return their rental car, catch the flight, and guess what he does? He walked it off. Weehawk, beautiful. The name Weehawk comes because he lives in, I believe the city's called Chillicothe, which is where Western Carolina is, the Catamounts, but he's also a Jayhawk fan, diehard. So Weehawk, because we is like where he's living in Carolina. So, and then the final one that you had was Wake Forest 24 compared to Tennessee 2024. I agree with that one. That was, I think I said it on the show. If not, I said it in the pregame or the pre-show. That was a comparison that I had for much of the season, but I think Wake Forest has played themselves into a top 16 seed. So I don't think I would feel as comfortable labeling them as that. Quentin tweeted out, he says, I'll give it a go. And his comparisons were 2024 Tennessee to 2023 Florida. So that was the same as you. 2024 Kentucky to 2023 Virginia, which was the same as you. 2024 Arkansas, 2023 Tennessee, which is a little, you had Arkansas compared to last year's LSU. He compares this year's Texas A&M team to last year's Wake Forest. And then this year's Wake Forest team to last year's TCU. I wouldn't go with I don't know if I'm as big of a fan of the Wake Forest comparisons, but the top three are all right. I'm not going to critique his because he's not on here to defend his opinion. I have two that I came up with Grissom. Like, again, I said I didn't feel the need to stretch any of these, but I feel like I know this Clemson baseball program pretty well after the 2 years that I've been following them almost every game. This year's Georgia team seems like last year's Clemson team. A little overlooked in the preseason because brand new coach, first year, but it was a highly respected coach that's had very good results elsewhere prior to joining his program down in the South. Wes Johnson only moves 2 states over, but same thing. He's a new head coach in the SEC, and they have destroyed expectations coming into the year. Last year's Clemson team, they mixed and matched on the mound, and they had Caden Grice as a superstar. This year's Georgia team, Charlie Condon's much better than Caden Grice, but it's still kind of the same thing where they're mixing and matching on the mound. You could say that they have a couple of guys that they use as top options, whether it be Leighton Finley or Charlie Goldstein. You could have said the same thing last year where Caden Grice was the Sunday starter, but he seemed like their best pitcher. And then they went with Ethan Darden and some guy's name that I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. I don't know why. So do you have a bone to pick with that comparison, this year's Georgia to last year's Clemson?
No, I like it. I think both teams are right there with each other. And I would, just like I was on Clemson last year when I think their regional or whatever. I bet them to win it. I was really high on Clemson to take care of business at the end of the season, just like I'm probably going to be on Georgia. It's to an extent, like I always say that Arkansas's teams are usually built for Omaha. They're not going to be reliant on the home run, and it's going to be based on very deep pitching, long at bats, getting on base, and then capitalizing. But the regionals and super regionals, you can still win by swinging the bat. And I think Georgia's going to be in that boat.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't as convinced that Clemson was going to win that regional last year. They got the death blow with Tennessee, who everybody kind of thought
that's right.
They weren't playing like your typical 2 seed at that point of the season, but it was what it was. So I didn't place any money on Clemson. I was rooting for them. I remember tweeting back and forth with, I think, Johnny at that time. And we were on opposite sides of the battle. That went 14 innings, and then Cam Canarella gets ejected in that game, and it completely turned momentum. And then the other comparison that I had was this year's Clemson team feels a lot like last year's Kentucky, where some cracks in the armor have shown down the stretch of the season. And again, this is kind of the one where, like, if you compare competition in the ACC that they've played to the SEC, it doesn't quite match up. So Clemson's still getting away with it, and they're winning baseball games, whereas last year's Kentucky was not. Clemson, they're breaking the RPI right now. They're still like top 5 in it right now. But at this point, I don't think Clemson is like in that top tier anymore, just from what I've seen baseball-wise, how they've played this weekend and in the past 2 or 3 weeks. Just the inconsistencies there on both sides of the ball, not just the bullpen. And you kind of saw that last year with Kentucky, where they still were a host. They were still able to get to the super regional, but they also kind of got a good draw. Clemson's going to probably need a favorable draw. I don't think they need a great draw to get to the super if they're hosting it, but you can't get another top tier 2 seed like they did last year. I don't think it's
are they still in your top 8?
Yeah, I think they're a top 8 team right now currently.
So they have Coastal Carolina and then Boston College to close it out.
Yeah,
I feel like they're going to be a 40-win team.
I think they lose that game, the Coastal. Gary Gilmore's last season or last home game at Springbrook Stadium. So I was going to do this at the end of the show, but cheers to West Virginia's Randy Mazey. I don't have alcohol here, but Mazey has done wonderful things with that Mountaineer baseball program. His last game at home as head coach for West Virginia, he's retiring. He's hanging up the cleats after this season. That was very, very cool to see what West Virginia and their fans did after that game. I saw all of that on social media. That was awesome. Before we jump into –
hang on real quick, because I just remembered why I would have been on Clemson in Tennessee's bracket. Clemson was plus 135. Tennessee was plus 145. That was the one that I said bet them both. You're guaranteed a profit. Why would Clemson and Tennessee been plus 135 and plus 145? They had a 98% chance, I think, of winning that regional, one of those two teams.
Yeah, because it was Charlotte.
Shout out to our guides, by the way. Super nice to be able to go back to that. Those are also under the content page at collegebaseballinsiders.com.
Are you planning on doing that and running it back this year?
Oh, yeah. We'll do it.
Cool. All right. Yeah, if it is similar to last year, or similar to this preseason, I contributed a little bit to the preview guide. It's good stuff. And he does it again like they did last year. There's a ton of very good information for everybody, and it's free. So check out their website, collegebaseballinsiders.com. Also, check out Royal Retros here, proud sponsor of SGPN. Are you looking to prove that you know ball? What better way to showcase your fandom than with an old school piece of gear from a classic team? Royal Retros has jerseys, t-shirts, hats, jackets, sweatshirts, and more from the vintage sports leagues and teams that you know and love. The Dirty Bird, the Orange Crush, or the Sack Exchange all make for sick jerseys for real fans. Use promo code SGPN for 10% off your order today. That's code SGPN at royalretros.com to take 10% off today. Okay, let's wrap it up with the top 8s. We did this last week, created good conversation, just jumping off points. But I think we did a great job at talking about a lot of this, so I don't think we're going to have to do much of that this week. Grissom, go ahead and just rattle off your 1 through 8 here.
So number 8, I've got your Clemson Tigers. I didn't feel good dropping them completely out. I still think what they've accomplished as a whole for this season has been impressive, and who knows what can happen in the playoffs. But number 7, rightfully so, Wake Forest Demon Deacons get the big series sweep over Clemson. So welcome back to the top 8, Wake. Let's see if you can make some noise. I gave you out 14-1 today and yesterday on VSiN. That right now, is, in my opinion, is probably the best value you can get, because the short shots are, they're short shots for a reason. They're probably going to win, but
it's a great look.
They don't want that chalk. Oregon State, number 6. You could flip-flop North Carolina, Oregon State. I feel like Oregon State's problem has just been road games. They get a series win at home. I think in one game they outscored UCLA like 20 points or something, or 20 runs. They won 15-1 today. This team is high-powered on offense. Pitching is the Achilles heel that I think is going to ultimately keep this team from winning it all. But Oregon State, stake a claim at 6. Number 5, North Carolina Tar Heels. We talked about it. The Tar Heels have had every injury thrown their way. They're kind of like last year's Arkansas squad, just continue to get injured and continue to still win games. They're looking at well over a 40-win season. And I like this North Carolina team. For when you're looking at value teams in the ACC right now, I think you've got to go Wake Forest 1, North Carolina 2. Texas A&M comes in at number 4. Bad loss, in my opinion, against Ole Miss. I know it's on the road, but this team's struggling right now. They're probably going to get right against Arkansas next week. Who is my number 3 team? Right behind Kentucky, with Tennessee still in that number 1 spot.
Cool.
So this was very much like eye test who they just beat, obviously, because Kentucky is right ahead of Arkansas, who's right ahead of A&M, because they won their series against Mississippi State, who was 14th. A&M did not. So I think Arkansas leapfrogs A&M. And we get a number 3 versus number 4 showdown next weekend in College Station.
Okay. So I take it a little bit more on the resume side for my rankings. I was looking at, kind of their recent performances, 1, 2 overall record, 3 non-conference strength of schedule, how they perform on the road, how they perform against other top competition. That's how I've devised my top 8. Last week, I had the hot take that you guys didn't like of Oklahoma at 8. They hold serve. They sweep Baylor. So Oklahoma, 8th ranked for me. Number 7, I have Georgia. They've steadily climbed in my respect for Georgia. They're currently 2nd in the RPI this season. The 118 non-conference strength of schedule is not amazing. They're also 8-9 on the road, but they're 28-3 at home. They've only got 12 losses total on the year. Georgia has overachieved my expectations for sure. They are the 7th best team in my opinion right now. 6th, I have Clemson. We've talked about them a lot this show. I'll move on to number 5, North Carolina, who we've talked about quite a bit on this show. 4, I have Texas A&M. 3, Arkansas. 2, I'm valuing head-to-head as well here. Kentucky over Arkansas at 2. And then number 1, I have Tennessee. I've now, because of Clemson getting swept, I have a new number 1 this weekend. Tennessee's my number 1. That's going to wrap up.
Go ahead. What's Oklahoma's overall record? You said you put stock in that.
So Oklahoma's overall record is 32-17. That I valued their 9th ranked non-conference strength of schedule. I valued their 12-4 road record. I valued their 9-5 quad 1 record. They've beaten good teams when they've been able to play them. Like, their schedule doesn't offer as many of those quad one opportunities, and they scheduled well in the non-conference. They're in the middle of America. You could be like Arkansas and have a 48th non-conference strength of schedule, which isn't bad. They do all right non-conference strength of scheduling. They had Texas Tech in midweek and whatever else example you want to pull, but Oklahoma is ranked 9th. Like, I value
Oregon
that
State's
as well.
pretty good.
So Oregon State I expected them to sweep UCLA. That didn't change any of my expectations.
No, I mean Arkansas's non-con strength schedule. We played Oregon State.
Yeah, you played one game against them too. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
if we could have played a series, that would have been more fun. But yeah, take it.
All right, so that's gonna wrap up this show, the second edition of Aces of Bases. We're gonna get out of here quick because Matt's camera has frozen for the last minute. Nice. But thanks for joining, Grissom. Any parting words?
Well, I caught some flack by Oklahoma fans about not ranking them in my top 8. So I started to look at their schedule, and I just can't. I get it. It was a series sweep, I think, against Lamar. It was proving to not be as bad. I think Lamar might be pretty good. But looking at their schedule, like they lost the series to Texas. Texas has proved to not be very good. Oklahoma State.
I would disagree. Like, they've actually won like 5 series in a row here.
Oklahoma State beat them. Oklahoma State looks to be pretty good. Lose a midweek to Oral Roberts 3-1. I beat somebody. That would be my. And you say they fared well in the non-conference schedule, but who's that?
I'm saying they scheduled well in the non-conference. It's 9th ranked in the country. When people are looking at that,
but I wonder what makes that up, because they played Oregon, Tennessee, and Nebraska. So what is helping them? The fact that they beat Tennessee and Tennessee's won?
Yeah, probably. That's
like outside of that, their non-conference schedule wasn't very good.
We're talking
like looking at it on paper.
We're talking too long while your face is frozen. We're supposed to get out of here.
All right.
Because this would be a good argument and something that we could flip or something, but you're frozen. Texas, for what it's worth, they've actually played pretty well over recently. Series win over.
My face is frozen too.
Yeah, series win over Baylor. Series win over Kansas State. Series win over Houston. Series win over TCU. Over Oklahoma. Over Oklahoma State. Over UCF, and they finished the year at home against Kansas. They won like 6 of their last 7 series. They're kind of like Florida. They can't play on the midweek. All right. Thank you for joining the second episode of Aces of Bases. We'll get out of here. Adios, amigos.